Hello everyone. It's March 23rd. About an hour ago, our governor, Jay Inslee, has just announced a stay-at-home measure. So the corona crisis is at the new level, and the response is at the new level. And so here at Eishoji, we thought we would just share some words of encouragement and Zen with you. I've prepared a short little talk to share with you that I am calling the Corona Sutra. And you may recognize already from your study of the Shobogenzo that Dogen often recommends that in addition to meditating, we should study the sutras. That's very, very important. But in addition to studying written sutras, he also calls many things in the world that are not written sutras. Most famously, the Sansrikyo, the Mountains and Waters Sutra. The Sutra then of nature, of the natural world. And Dogen famously says, even a mote of dust is sufficient to turn the Dharma wheel. I always think of that in my heart as the Dust Sutra. Kosho-san, of course, has made Eishoji famous with what we might call the Poop Sutra. That's also a very important teaching. But tonight, more seriously, I'd like to talk about Corona as Sutra. I'd like to start by putting things in a little bit of perspective by recalling line 24 of the Hana Shingyo, which we chant all the time, the Heart Sutra. Mu ke ge ko mu u ku hu. So it begins Koshin mu ke ge, and this is called out after Avalokiteshvara tells Shariputra that the Bodhisattva relies on consummating wisdom, on perfecting wisdom, the Prajna Paramita. If you understand what Prajna is consummately, if you clarify your mind, if you go to the depths of your mind, Prajna in Sanskrit does not mean wisdom in terms of knowing wise things. Prajna is what is before knowledge, jhana. Before all knowledge, at the depth of your mind, if you consummate and perfect this, the result is Koshin mu kege, dwell without mind barriers. The Japanese translates chitta in Sanskrit, mind or consciousness, heart mind, full range of your mind, as shin. You dwell without mind barriers. There are no walls to your consciousness. Mukege ko, without walls around your mind, without mind barriers, without hindrances to your mind, without your mind being trapped in itself. Mu ku hu. It is thus without fear. If the mind is without barriers or walls, if it's not enclosed in itself, we know that the thought of the ego is a sense of the self closed in the wall of itself, obstructed from its interrelationship with all things. If these walls break down, if we understand our relationship with all things, if we're no longer stuck in ourselves, no mind walls, no fear. Who is afraid when there are walls around the mind? The walls around the mind create someone stuck on itself, disconnected from everything else, that then fears for itself. It fears for itself because it sees everything outside of itself coming after it. You take down the walls of the mind in practice by consummating wisdom. You have no fear. The poet Gary Snyder, when he studied in Japan for 10 years, Zen practice, he said later his breakthrough was when his teacher told him, do not be afraid. That has to mean tear down the walls. Without the walls, there's nothing to be afraid of. Now we think, okay, what makes that true? Is that true because I read it in a sutra and the sutra just tells me something? I say, okay, well, I have Zen practice, therefore I should just believe that because I read it. Dogen is very, very clear about what it means to read a sutra. And in one of the more remarkable passages in the Shobogenzo, from a 22nd fascicle called Kankin, reading a sutra, Dogen says very clearly and very profoundly what it means to learn something from a sutra. For example, what we're trying to think about today, in a time in which everyone's afraid. Tear down the walls of your mind. Without the walls of your mind, there will be no fear. What does it mean? Dogen's quite clear, and these lines I really, really cherish because they're so clear and so penetrating. The practice and realization of unsurpassable, complete enlightenment. Now you may remember that in Mahayana, the obsession with nirvana is limited to the Theravada tradition. The point is not nirvana, but to do something more completely, more consummately. Again, the perfection of wisdom, complete, to really complete the clarification of the mind. When you have this, it is brought forth, sometimes by a teacher, sometimes by a sutra. Well, how does a teacher bring it forward? How does a sutra bring it forward? Dogen tells us. A teacher is a Buddha ancestor of the entire self. So the teacher who tells you something right now is not telling you her or his opinion, not giving you this or that thing to believe, not telling you something that is philosophically true or not true. It's not a metaphysical speculation. It is most deeply not even that teacher speaking. When a teacher speaks, if she or he says something true of the Dharma itself speaks, and the mind of all Buddha ancestors is manifesting as the teacher's mind, which is manifesting as your mind. So a teacher is a Buddha ancestor of the entire self. A teacher is not a teacher who lives within the walls and barriers of her or himself. The teacher is speaking in such a way that the coming down of the wall of the teacher self is the coming down of the walls of the self itself, so that the self itself manifests. Okay, well, how do I learn from a sutra? Dogen continues. A sutra is a sutra of the entire self. So it's true that when you read a sutra, you have to be very careful, look up words, maybe learn some new words and new languages. That's all very important and very good. But left to itself, those are word walls. Those are just things in which you enclose yourself in beliefs. The Buddha himself very famously said, and it's in the Pali Canon, beliefs are the origin of war. My little beliefs behind my little wall versus your little beliefs in your little wall, my kingdom of thought versus your kingdom of thought. That's not what it is to read a sutra. To read a sutra is to have it tear down your wall. Reading a sutra is learning real encouragement. That is, becoming fearless. You know, one of the most famous of the Buddha's mudras or hand signs. Do not be afraid. Dogen continues. We say this because you yourself are the self of all Buddha ancestors. You yourself are the self of all sutras. You yourself are this becoming courageous with the coming down of walls as we consummately study sutras and learn from teachers. The self itself manifests. Dogen continues to be very clear. What does it mean, self? Although it is called the self, it is not bound by you and I. That is not the Zen perspective. The Zen perspective is not I the teacher, you the student. I the student, you the teacher. It's not me and you. The self itself manifests. It's not me afraid of you or me courageous for you. It is the self manifesting, and we are fearless at a time in which so many people are afraid, and therefore so many people will need our help. He continues. It is a vital eyeball, a living eyeball. You become the Dharma eye with your teachers, with your Sangha members, in your practice, reading a sutra. You become the Dharma eye. You become the self. A vital fist breaking down the wall. A living fist that breaks down the wall of the mind, and we have no fear. Only when you have this do you understand why we do things like remembering a sutra. Many people, the gattas, of course, were written in such a way that people can memorize them. Read them at all. If you read them to have word barriers, if you're running after word attachments, I think we need to remember that reading does not come first. To read the sutra is for the wall of reading to come down. Chanting, Hana Shinko every day. Hana Shinko is after the wall falls down. That's why we chant it. Copying, Hirade Shoji, sometimes we copy sutras. That's a very ancient and venerable practice. Receiving and maintaining a sutra. I love a Lotus Sutra. I love a Shobogenzo. The point isn't to trap people in the word walls of me or the word walls of Dogen. The point is, in the true Dharma eye, the walls fall down. All of these, Dogen says, are the practice realization, Dogen's famous phrase, the oneness of practice realization of Buddha ancestors. I always love the ninth of the 10 ox herding pictures. There are many versions of that. The one that I love, one of the great Chinese versions, is when you read, when you study with a teacher, what happens to you, I just love this phrase. Snowflake on a hot stove. Meet the ancestors. That is what it is to study a sutra. Snowflake on a hot stove. Meet Coronavirus Sutra. Dogen continues, to encounter a sutra, however, is not easy. You know, this word that's being translated as encounter, shoken, it's a very important word. It also appears in the Hana Shingo, the Japanese version. Literally means to see each other. You know, when the teacher sees the student, when the friend sees the friend, when you see the sutra sees you. It's utterly transitive. You see eye to eye with reality. And so I'd like to think, okay, well, the Corona Sutra, how do we see eye to eye with it? How are we not afraid? Of course, we're afraid because the little self that we have hiding behind our walls, its first and most desperate sign is that it's afraid of its own death, more than anything else. What will I be if I do not have these little walls? And so for Dogen, it was very important for you to encounter your own death and look at it squarely. Not because you're in a hurry to die. You want to be present, eye to eye with every moment. One day that moment will be the moment of your death. It will not be a repeatable moment. You will have the moment of your death, and then you will not have a chance to repeat that a second time. But death reminds us that every moment is like death in this respect. It's unrepeatable. It's singular. Each now and here is now and here because it is not what it was then or there. It is not what it will be soon elsewhere. Now and here, each moment is unrepeatable. If you do not have the mind, if it's frozen behind walls and stuck, it cannot be present to what each moment asks of us. And so I think it's good to confront also then our own mortality. And so in the coronavirus, I turn to one of my favorite poems ever written, because I believe its words are shattering. Shattering not of the person, that is the self, but shattering of the wall. You know, as you all know, Dogen was born in Kyoto. He had some hard memories in Kyoto, death of his parents, but he also, this was his childhood home. He had a lot of good memories. And when Dogen was 54 in the Japanese calendar, 53 in the Western calendar, in Japan you're 1 year old when you are born, he was very, very sick. And he realized that if he had any chance of living, he would have to walk back to Kyoto. And you know, Eiheiji was built very far away from Kyoto, especially if you imagine distances in terms of what it is to walk. So Dogen began his journey by foot back to Kyoto, hoping to find a cure, to find a doctor, hoping also to see his old home. Maybe if he does not make it, maybe die in a place that was a friendly place in his memories. And as he's walking and he knows that things are not grim, he writes this extraordinary poem. Just when my longing to see the moon over Kyoto one last time grows deepest. Yeah, I'm dying. Maybe I'll make it to my childhood home. Wouldn't that be great? To really finally be able to see the place of my birth at the end of my life. At the moment he most wants to see the moon over Kyoto. And you remember too, the moon is also a very famous image of awakening. Wouldn't it be great to spend my last moments in Kyoto? Just when my longing to see the moon over Kyoto one last time grows deepest, when I'm most attached to it, the moon I behold this autumn night leaves me sleepless for its beauty. Those words shatter a billion worlds. That is the vital fist that shatters all walls. This moon, now and here, it was not the moon I wanted. It was not the moon I longed for. But living, fully present, this is the moon I have now. And it is beautiful, so beautiful, I cannot sleep through the night. I really love those words. And I think about them a lot in these corona times, because we all know that the world we lived in even 2 weeks ago is gone. The moon over the Seattle, the moon over the Puget Sound that we may long to go back to, it's gone. We have to keep our mind and be present to the moon that we behold these spring nights. And Dogen held on to that, and as he held on to that, he also composed his death poem, which you have presented as close as you can to the moment of your death. 54 years lighting up the sky, the vital eyeball, the lightning that flashes, illuminating the great darkness. A quivering leap smashes a billion words, like these words here do. Entire body looks for nothing. In the Heart Sutra, which we began tonight, seeking nothing, but having the consummation of wisdom. The walls come down, and with them my fear. Entire body looks for nothing, living, still alive even at the moment of my death. This too, now and here. This too, the moon of an autumn night or a spring night. I plunge into yellow springs, into the kingdom of the dead. Now, this is not me saying that we should all expect to die soon. I think the stay-at-home order is very good. I think that it will actually minimize that. But we are seeing the death of a world. We are seeing the death of our routines. We are seeing our economy come apart. What will it become when it comes back together again? It's hard to imagine at this point. But we have to remember that autumn night. So I'd like to conclude with a poem that came out in Ireland in the last couple of days by a Capuchin Franciscan monk. His name is Richard Hendrick. Sometimes that we like the Franciscan Capuchin Trappist sorts of monks. I think they live a very radical life. In a way, we see some of our companion Zen practice. And so as this monk, Richard Hendrick, writes in his poem called Lockdown. So I'd like to read it to you tonight as we go into stay at home. And Ireland is in what they're calling lockdown. So they're in the same situation. Notice how he begins his first line. Yes, there is fear. I continue. Yes, there is isolation. Yes, there is panic buying. Yes, there is sickness. Yes, there is even death. But they say that in Wuhan, after so many years of noise, you can hear the birds again. They say that after just a few weeks of quiet, the sky is no longer thick with fumes, but blue and gray and clear. They say that in the streets of Assisi, people are singing to each other across the empty squares, keeping their windows open so that those who are alone may hear the sounds of family around them. They say that a hotel in the west of Ireland is offering free meals and delivery to the housebound. Today, a young woman I know is busy spreading flyers with her number throughout the neighborhood so that the elders may have someone to call on. Today, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, Eishoji, are preparing for welcome and to shelter the homeless, the sick, the weary. All over the world, people are slowing down and reflecting. All over the world, people are looking at their neighbors in a new way. All over the world, people are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are. Remember, tear the walls down. To how big we really are. To how little control we really have. Dogen went to Kyoto to live longer. Knowing he would die, he could not sleep because of the beauty of the autumn moon. To love. So we pray and we remember that, yes, there is fear, but there does not have to be hate. Yes, there is isolation, but there does not have to be loneliness. Yes, there is panic buying, but there does not have to be meanness. Yes, there is sickness, but there does not have to be the disease of the soul. Yes, there is even death, but there can always be a rebirth of love. Wake to the choices you make as how to live now. Today, breathe. That is Zen. Breathe. Listen behind the factory noises of your panic. The birds are singing again. The sky is clearing. Spring is coming. And we are always encompassed by love. Open the windows of your soul, and though you may not be able to touch across the empty square, sing. So I wish you all encouragement. The Sangha is one of the three great treasures. I'm so happy to share it with you. Please know that we at Eishoji are here for you. Thank you.